it's a note to myself that I need to reflect on what my characters are doing and go like, that was stupid, don't make them do that.
If you see some advice that you say, I just can't do that, I'm not learning TikTok or whatever, you don't have to. You can do something else.
If somebody leaves a negative review, they are probably not your target audience to begin with.
They're basically saying this doesn't have the level of complexity and depth that I come to expect. And I'm drinking and ranting like it's 20,000 words. I can't give you the 60,000 80,000 word experience. That's like Scheherazade, Emma, that's the sign that we need to
Welcome, everybody, to the BookFunnel podcast. This is episode 3. I am joined today by my co-hosts, Kelly Tansey and Emma Allison, and our guest today, Patsy Collins. Patsy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm English. I write cozy mysteries at the moment. I live on the south coast of England, but we travel a lot in our camper van, which I refer to as mobile writing retreat. So I do a lot of writing there on location as well.
Yeah, it looks like you guys, are you mainly traveling around the UK, or are you going all around other parts of Europe as well?
Mostly UK. We go over to Southern Ireland and to France sometimes, but
Okay.
a lot of it's in Scotland and England, Wales.
Right. I know, because I was checking out your YouTube channel briefly when we were going to have you on, or deciding that, and looks like you've been to some really great places. That's definitely something I want us to bring up later on and chat about, because that's kind of like a dream of mine. I'm definitely not in the position to do that presently,
We're very lucky.
but yeah, I would say so, because you're going to some beautiful places and writing while you do it. I'm very jealous. I just have to say that. Right. But no, I think this is going to be a good episode. We're talking about specifically getting more reviews on Amazon. That's going to be our main topic of it. We'll get to that here in a little bit. Before we dive in, though, I do have to touch base with Kelly, because we need an update on your reader magnet situation. We've been touching on that every time here. Where are we at?
Okay, so I've been getting a lot of downloads on the because I have the full book out. I'm doing book 1 as a giveaway, and that has been I've put it in some BookFunnel promos. I've been getting lots of signups, and I appreciate all of them. And they now have a full welcome sequence, which is beautifully done and ready to go. And so they're all getting that welcome sequence, which is something I didn't set up before. Again, I'm going to say it again. Do it when you don't have any books out. If you are just getting started, get that welcome sequence going. Make sure you have it there. So it's nice to know that they're, going through. And I've had a couple of unsubscribes, not too many. Just, they picked up the book and then they unsubscribed, and that's okay. But for the most part, yeah, it's been going pretty well. Someday I will have time to sit down and actually write a full reader magnet. I have not started on that. For my new pen name, I have started on that. The one that I haven't actually gotten anything. I'm actually starting from scratch with that pen name, so I'm actually trying to do things right. It's just finding the time to write, and that's my downfall. Because full-time work and family and all that. So, but I'm working on it. It's getting there.
And I have to draw attention. We're recording this on October 31st, Halloween. So Emma, you are dressed for the occasion, kind of outdoing all of us here a little bit. Although Patsy did point out, and I didn't realize this when I picked this shirt, but that I'm also currently in a costume. I could just go as a pumpkin. So I thought that was funny. It is Halloween day, so I know my kids are looking forward to trick-or-treating tonight. It actually got moved because of the weather, so where I'm at. But yeah, as far as self-publishing is concerned, Halloween, I write in science fiction. So it seems to me like Halloween isn't that big of an influence, but I imagine in cozy mystery and romance, those are themes there that better fit with the holiday of Halloween, if I'm not mistaken. Or am I guessing at that right?
Yeah, quite a few romance authors will do spooky themed or darker themed promos, or
Sure.
if they have current content, they'll get together and repackage that. So yeah, holidays are always wonderful for romance authors because it gives us an excuse.
Right. Right. No, yeah, I could not bring myself to write a Halloween themed space opera. I don't know that that's something that anybody would want, but a Halloween cozy mystery to me, that seems like it would be a much better fit.
It could work. It's not something I've done. Halloween's not such a big deal over here as it is
Sure.
in the States. But
Yeah.
it definitely could fit. In my first book, I've got people in, fancy dress and costumes.
Sure.
And that's good for crimes in lots of ways. So yeah, Halloween is definitely something that could be
Right.
done. I write
Right.
a lot of short stories, so I've written quite a few like cozy ghost stories.
Right. Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah, there's definitely scope for it. But like you say, any holiday, anything, just so gives it a bit more of a theme and people know where they are.
Exactly.
Year wise and things is good.
Exactly. Well, and you mentioned there too the difference between like the UK and the US. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap in the holidays that we celebrate. But yeah, the Halloween in my house, I have to set a date. It's basically like we're like September. It's like the middle of September. I think like September 16th is the date that I tell my wife when she can start decorating for Halloween, because if I didn't, she would be decorating in August. And that I don't know if that's a thing that happens in the UK or not, but it's a big deal for a lot of people over here. So, but that being said, uh, if you are marketing, whether you're an author in the US or you're an author in the UK, if you happen to be marketing your book, if you're a UK author marketing your book in the US around Halloween, I imagine you could lean into that a little bit if it's a good fit for your genre. But I don't know. It's an interesting time of year. But I want to move on right now to our first segment. We're going to do our tips from the trenches. In this segment, we are going to offer some tips and advice to our audience. Of course, here at BookFunnel, our author support team, we are self-published authors ourselves. So we've been doing this for a while, each of us with varying degrees of experience in different things. And so we like to pass off on some of that knowledge and inspiration to you guys with some tips that you can easily digest and then apply to your own writing, your self-publishing strategy, marketing, anything really related to self-publishing. I am going to lead off today, so we get mine out of the way, because I can be a little bit of a windbag. But I'll get mine done, and then we can get on to everybody else's. And just like last week, I'm going to give a writing tip specifically. And that is that when you are in the middle of writing, and I find myself running into this a lot myself, you're in the middle of writing and you've maybe forgotten some element of what you're about to write, or maybe there's a piece of the puzzle that you don't quite have just yet. I use brackets while I'm writing to basically communicate to myself later on when I come back to edit what it is I was trying to say or what needs to be filled in. So the most simple example of this is if I forget a character's eye color and I'm making a reference to that, or I want to make a reference to that, it's very practical, or I'm forgetting some element of their appearance or some descriptor, I will put in brackets, John's brackets, eye color brackets, and I'll continue from there. So I don't have to stop and go back and search and be like, wait, what was his eye color again? I can't remember. But it also works for like plot details too. And in fact, I found myself doing this just the other day, where there were some connections I could make back. I was writing in a later chapter and realized, oh, I could have set something up in an earlier chapter. And so I just right there put that in brackets, making a reference to something that had happened in a previous chapter. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill that in. But the brackets make sure that I can easily search through my manuscript to find those little notes. and they don't get lost because I've got to go and resolve all those things before it goes on to the next step. But anyway, that's my tip. So if you're in the middle of writing and you've forgotten something, or you have that moment of uncertainty, because I think that can really derail a writing session, use the brackets, put whatever it is in there that's going to help you move on, understanding you're going to come back and resolve it later, and then you can keep going. So there you go.
Okay, so we clearly don't talk about these before we start because that was
Oh,
pretty much my tip.
well, go
It's
ahead.
very, very close. Like because we talked last week about fast draft and like get the words on the page
Yeah.
and then come back and do the editing is where you can add all the really finite detail. And mine is it's not brackets. I use capital letters. Like I put on cap locks and I
Yeah.
put my note to myself. And so this is literally I have like my little note chart of like what I'm gonna say. It's like Jack starts talking, I'm like, whoa, wait. Great
Yeah.
minds, I guess. Another one, and this is not I can't take credit for it, but I saw it on, I don't remember where it was. It was on maybe a TikTok or something like that where they were giving writing advice. So I can't take credit for it, but it does work for me, which is to use if I have a character I haven't named yet, because I'll be drafting and I'll be like, oh, this guy probably needs a name now. And I'll just put TK and in capital letters TK, and TK is not typically in the English language together. So when I go and do a find TK, it will search those down. It's not going to find a bunch of random other words that I don't want. So I can just hunt down that, the control find. And, when you see TK as you're going back and editing, it's like, boom, there it is. So it'll be things like it's usually like city names of like something that I'm creating. It's not already named, or if I don't know where I'm going to set something yet, I'll put that in there. And then and a lot for characters, especially side characters I haven't named. So anyway, that's my tip. It's very similar to Jack's.
I'm gonna have to now search up a list of words in the English language
That has TK
that
in it.
have TK to get. And you're right, it is. It's a very odd list. I don't even know necessarily what these words are. So,
Yeah,
hey,
it's
there you go.
I mean there's no common. I guess there probably are words that have TK, but they're
Yeah.
not very common, and so you're probably not going to find that in your manuscript.
Now, I prefer to use the brackets
Mhm.
over capital letters, and here's why: is because I can then search for a bracket. I can do a
Yeah,
text for a
that makes
bracket
sense.
and find those things. So, uh,
Mine is because when I'm editing, I'm gonna find those things
yeah,
typically. So I see that big bold like, "Hey, yo, you didn't write this scene." Or I'll put something stupid in there like, "Why are they doing this?" Like because I
yeah,
want to come back and be like, it's a note to myself that I need to reflect on what my characters are doing and go like, "That was stupid. Don't make them do that." And so, yeah, that's mine.
no, that's a good one. Good one.
Oh, Emma's tip is more for me than y'all because I am still going through my reboot of my welcome sequences and 45 books with back matter links I have to change out. So, people by me. I'm going to start using, if not a bit.ly or redirect link. And this is stuff we all, how there are things we know, but we never actually do. Let's just do it like a backup. People get your stuff backed up. But bit.ly links or a landing page on your website or your BookFunnel bundle landing page. And that way, whenever you're updating your reader magnet or anything you need to update in your back matter, you don't have to go through one by one in every single book, which might also trigger the Amazon bot for reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then because Amazon won't update all books, so you'll have 3,000 books out there in the wild with old back matter links, and you just got to grind your teeth. And yeah, that's not fun.
No, yeah, it is really helpful if you can just edit the either editing the actual page you're pointing to your website, pointing to a BookFunnel bundle, whatever it happens to be. I use personally Genius Link is what I use because it has some different functionality as well. And it works the same as Bitly. So you can put that link in there and then you can go. I did this, in fact, when I was setting up, what was it? I mean, a lot of people ask this question like, okay, I don't have this book published yet, but I want to link to or I want to link to something that's not published yet. And so you can use one of those Bitly links or Genius links, and then you can come in and after the fact, once that is published, redirect that Bitly link or Genius link to that spot. So yeah, I second that tip. That's a good one.
And I say your website or your BookFunnel landing page, because I think those are the most stable. Like, I'm never getting rid of my BookFunnel account, and I'm probably
I hope not.
I'm probably not going to switch websites, but I might. So right now I'm erring on the side of using my BookFunnel landing page.
Sure. But even if you did switch, say, providers, right? So maybe you're hosting your website with WordPress and you're switching to a different website host, you just have to make sure that the domain URL that you use is the same.
Gotcha.
Once you switch, it's agnostic to the host of your website if you use the same URL.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if like you choose a different theme, or because right now I'm on Elementor, so I could do a completely different setup, but
yeah.
That I would ever for Wix, but if I did.
Right. You could switch to a different host, and as long as the URL is the same, there might be a little bit of downtime there if you're transitioning over, but yeah, it'd be the same.
That came up in the author queue this week, 301 redirects. So maybe that's something like that.
Yes. But Patsy, you got a tip for us, some authorly advice?
Yeah, I have. There's loads of good advice out there. And people are tempted to think, I must do that, and I must do that, and I must do that. And you don't have, there's almost nothing you actually have to do. And there's usually more than one way of doing something. So if you see some advice that you say, I just can't do that, I'm not learning TikTok or whatever, you don't have to. You can do something else. And also, if what you're doing is already working really well for you, the fact that most other people are doing something else doesn't mean you need to switch. Just
here. Say that one more time, please.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the grass is not
if
always
it's working. Don't fix it.
Right. Exactly.
Broke, don't fix it.
I think that's true, especially as someone who, like, I come up with the ideas for all of our webinars, and I like to talk about all the different types of things you could do, and I kind of like, that's just fun to me to sit there and think all the different strategies that you could employ and all the things that you could do. But no, you're absolutely right. You don't have to do all those things. And I think it's really important to understand everybody's different. And like you said, there's different ways to get to the same place. There's different definitions of success, for one, but then there's different ways to become successful, in your career. Not everybody gets there the same way. I think the thing I tack on to the end of that is, if you're doing something now and it's not working, don't be afraid to let it go. As well, and move on, and either simplify and just let that thing go, or try something different for a while. But yeah, you don't have to overdo it and do all the things at once. I think that's gonna be, I think that's up there with the advice of, always be writing your next book. I think that's up there with that. It rings true, and it's so basic and fundamental. I want to move us along here to now our main topic for today, which is why we brought Patsy on. We're going to be talking about getting more reviews for your books on Amazon. And I imagine some of this may overlap and apply to other platforms, but obviously Amazon is the biggest game out there. That's where most authors are self-publishing. And so I think to kind of start us off here, Patsy, tell us, what do you do to get more reviews on Amazon? Or I imagine there was maybe a point where you were frustrated with the amount of reviews you were getting and you made some changes. And so fill us in.
I'm still frustrated.
Oh yeah. absolutely.
I mean, I started off, I just put my books on Amazon and hope for the best. And I can tell you that doesn't work very well. I started, one thing I did in the back of the books, I've just put a note saying if you can leave a review, that's very much appreciated. So at least when people get to the end of the book, the idea of leaving a review is hopefully in their minds. I didn't used to have an ARC team at all. And with my series, with the first book, I just asked a couple of people that I knew had read some of my other books and reviewed whether they would like to do it. I think I only had 4 people for the first one, which I did through the BookFunnel ARC package, whatever it is.
Right.
And that worked fine. Obviously, it doesn't matter how many there are, it works the same.
Right.
And then I do have a newsletter. So for the next one, I asked in the newsletter if anybody would like to join, and I got a few more people. And I think I asked on social media as well. So I did that and got a few more. I'm going to do, if anyone wants to be an ARC reader for Cozy Crime Mysteries, certainly let me get in touch. But I'm going to try and get more. And I think that's definitely a good way. But apart from that, I haven't tried. I mean, I do get left some reviews, but not as many as I would like.
Sure. I think you hit on some of the main things that I tell people to do, which obviously I think the first thing is just have something in your back matter to just put that seed out there in their mind that, hey, if you enjoyed this, you should leave a review. It'll be helpful. I think Amazon also has, depending on what device you're reading on, has made that process pretty simple too. Because like my son was reading a book on his iPad the other day, and you get to the very end, and right there it pops up, and you can review the book there immediately. So I think things like that, which that hasn't always been the case. I know that's been around for quite a while, but like even things like that, I think especially that almost makes it more potent if the very last page of your book is, hey, if you like it, leave a review, and then they turn that page and Amazon pops up with that, the option to write a review right then and there. Yeah, I think that makes that transition much more effective, that call to action. So most of your reviewers or the people who left reviews from you, they've come from your ARC team that you've requested through your newsletter. You put out a call to action for the most part.
Yeah.
So from your homegrown readers on your newsletter already.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the response to that? Was it pretty immediate? Did you have to kind of cajole people into?
I just asked once if anybody would like to do it, and a few people contacted me from, I can't remember whether they all came from they didn't all come from the newsletter. Some, I asked in various places, but I just asked once and sent it out, and not everybody reviewed the book.
Sure.
Took the copy, but I understand that's quite standard that they don't always. But I just did the normal. I emailed them to tell them the BookFunnel link would be coming, and did the steps through that.
Right.
So it wasn't. I don't think it would be a good idea to put a lot of pressure on people to read to join the team, because if they're not keen to do it, then you're not going to get a good result, I don't think.
Right. Well, I imagine too, because you're dealing with your newsletter subscribers are going to be subscribed to you for a variety of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are there because they just want to know when your next release is coming up, and they're not really worried about, well, some of those readers might actually be the readers who are really itching to get their hands on your next release, maybe getting their hands on it early. So maybe that's not the best example, but there's going to be people on your list for a variety of reasons. And to assume that everybody wants to be on your ARC team, one thing I've done and played around with was just giving the ARC to everybody on my mailing list, like just openly giving it to them. And then so a much more laissez-faire style, not necessarily recruiting, but just giving it to them and then being like, here you go. You can read it and review it if you want to. If not, it's just like a bonus for you being a subscriber. And I've gotten some reviews from that as well. So I think there's a variety of strategies, and that, like you said, something you don't want to be too aggressive on, because it does require a commitment from your readers. So do you, I assume you use like certified mail, BookFunnel certified mail to deliver those?
Yes.
Gotcha. And with certified mail, for those who don't know, right? I don't want this to turn into a clinic on how to use certified mail, but some of the functionality of it, you can send a reminder and you can send a follow-up email with instructions. Some authors do that. Some authors just send the first email and leave it as is. What did you do? What was your approach to it?
I contacted them myself initially, then I sent the first email, and then I did one just before the book was released with the link in, so it was easy to find the place to leave the review. Yeah, and that was it. I didn't chase them up.
Yeah, and that can still work. Obviously, it's worked for you. So yeah, it doesn't have to be overly I think it's a thing. Getting reviews and ARC teams and all that is something that I think some folks out there want to overcomplicate the whole issue, and I can understand why, because you're giving this book away for free, but on the other hand, you're kind of asking something from them in return too, right? You're asking for them to do some work on top of that. So I think it's important to have like realistic expectations and know that it's a numbers game. And like you said, you give your book to 100 readers, they're not all going to review it. That's just the way it goes. I wouldn't lose sleep over that. You know what I mean? Right? But that's just kind of how the game works. You know what I mean?
And they're not all necessarily reading it either. I think we come across authors who are like, I gave my ARC to 100 people and they all got to read my book for free. Probably 20% of them even cracked it open, especially cold traffic. Now, if you're talking about a team you've had for a while, it's different. But
yeah.
How have you noticed that your campaigns are different between like when you published your first book, your first ARC campaign versus now? How has it changed?
It was only 6 months apart.
That's fast. Okay.
I'd started writing the second one when I released the first one, so I could go faster. But
right.
The only difference was that I got a few more people on it. The first time everybody reviewed it, but there were only 5 of them, so 4 or 5, and then it was a few more. So this time, I'm sure the more I just ask the newsletter to people, and I get more, you'll probably get a lower percentage that actually do it. But I would rather ask people to contact me and go on the list than just give it to people. But I could see, there's plus and minuses with both of those.
Right. No, I think every strategy you use for recruiting is going to have its pros and cons. So you kind of have to weigh those things. And
sometimes it changes depending on like the book or the season. Like no one of my ARC campaigns are ever really the same, because maybe I'll just be in a different mood. So because like what you're saying, Patsy, there's no one true way. I mean, one true ring, but there's no one true way. So.
Well, and I think it's true about like getting some of the people off of your list that maybe aren't really interested or committed. You want people who are excited for your next book. And do you have any sort of requirements of people? Because you said that you prefer to have people that are committed to reading, that have reached out, that are wanting to read. You don't want to give it away just to everyone. Do you have a set of requirements that you've asked for people?
The ARC team, no, I've just said that you need to be able to a device to read the ebook, because otherwise there's no point doing it, and to be able to leave Amazon reviews. I think I've seen you say, Jack, sometimes it's happened to me, people assume they can leave an Amazon review, and when they come to do it, they find they can't.
Right.
Which happens, and I think even somebody may have left a review before and could, and then, you know, might not now be able to do it. So yeah, people might think they can and they're not, you know, they've just made a mistake. They weren't
Right.
saying something,
Yeah.
but that's the only thing. And the fact that they want to read the book. Yeah, I don't have any particular criteria other than that they're willing to do it and think they'll be able to do it.
Right.
I do say the length of the book, so to give them a clue what they're
Sure.
people.
What the commitment's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Before they dive in. Yeah. I
How long are your books typically?
90,000 words.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's
That's pretty big for, yeah.
Decent read. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a commitment. Yeah.
Right. I think it's there's like multiple stages to how you would recruit for an ARC team. So I think it's good at the beginning, and I think Patsy, your results probably speak to that a little bit, which is that to be a little bit more open about who is able to receive the ARC, and then over time, I think you can get a little bit more picky, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if you are doing ARCs for subsequent releases in a series and all that stuff. I think you can be a little bit more choosy about who you give your ARCs to, and have some more guidelines and things like that. But yeah, those are the things that I think people don't necessarily think about, and which is like, for example, being able to leave a review on Amazon. Typically what it is that you had to have spent, of course, because Amazon is an e-commerce platform, you have to have spent money on Amazon in the last like calendar year. I think it's like $50, or in the US at least. I don't know what it is for the UK site necessarily.
I believe it's £50. So.
£50. Okay. I assumed it was something like that, some arbitrary number. And so what I've done is, if they can't leave a review on Amazon for any reason, they can also leave a review on Goodreads. So that is an alternative. I think that works out well. That in addition to that, your Goodreads reviews will sometimes show up on your Amazon page, because Amazon actually owns Goodreads, has for a while. So sometimes your Goodreads reviews will show up on Amazon too, or that review rating will show up, I should say. And so it's good to get reviews there as well, because they might show up on your Amazon page. But I guess along those lines of things that, you know, when you're sending your first campaign, or you're sending your first, ARC out to readers, what were any other things that you stumbled upon, Patsy, that like you maybe hadn't thought of before you did it, or anything like that? Or was it pretty smooth sailing once you got to that point?
Yeah, I'm not, it's obviously very small scale that I've done, but yeah, I did find a couple of people, actually gave me to me some feedback on the book, which was interesting and useful, because obviously at that if they have found a typo or something, you can fix it, so that's good. But I do stress that's not what I'm asking people to do. I don't want them to think they're my proofreader or something like that. But I didn't come across any snags that I.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's that's a testament to BookFunnel, right? It's all, no, I'm kidding. It's definitely not. I mean, obviously, I think BookFunnel is great. Otherwise, it wouldn't be working for BookFunnel. But it's going to help make the delivery process smooth.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always those things like with your readers, like, not being able to leave a review on Amazon, things like that. Or again, like you said, communicating to them in advance how long the book is going to be and what they're signing up for. Because I know I've stumbled across that too, where I didn't communicate that information ahead of time. And sometimes, even sometimes in the review, they'd be like, this was too short, or this was too long. And it's like, well, that's not really the place to have left that information. They should have found that out time. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like it was a little unfair to include that in the review. Although I guess when they say it was too short, they could be complaining like, I really enjoyed this. It was too short. It was over too soon. Maybe you could spin that positively there. But I know, Emma, I think you had a question on timelines as well to ask Patsy.
Actually, now I'm more curious because it just occurred to me. Um, what are your what are your thoughts on incentives? Because we're talking about the whole you have to spend $50 to even have an Amazon review account, and then $50 it led to incentives. I'm like, have you ever tried that out, like giving out swag or a giveaway for like a $5 gift card or
But if it's against Amazon's terms and conditions to give anything other than a free copy of the book
Mhm.
or review, and they know everything. They would know. And I think they're right, because if I gave you a present for leaving me a review and you really didn't like the book, it would then be extra hard to give an honest review. So I think I can see why people do it. It's very tempting, and yeah, it is a lot of work to read the book and do it for people, but I don't think it's worth the risk with Amazon.
oh, you're
I,
walking straight and narrow.
yeah. You weren't, that wasn't a setup question, was it, Emma? I mean, I want to say, like, we have this
It's
here for,
it's one of those gray areas that authors are always talking about. Like,
yeah,
really, are you paying them for a review? And then what about if you go to like Hidden Gems or a service and you're paying them $100 for them to offer your arc to, like, is that technically paying for? So it's the whole what is, and of course,
sure.
Amazon doesn't make anything cut and dry. It's about what you
I
would
think it's
expect.
giving it to the reviewers, because I have a BookFunnel account, I pay for that. But the reviewers aren't getting anything. Jack's not reviewing my book. Or if he probably wouldn't like mine, but I mean, if he did leave a review, it would be just because he'd bought the book, not because he doesn't do it for every BookFunnel
Right.
customer.
Right.
So,
No, I do not. That is right.
yeah.
For anybody who thinks that, no. Um, well, and I think there's something to be said for like keeping the motivations pure as well. So like
Yeah.
the readers who have reviewed your book, the reward for them is getting to read the book,
Yeah.
right? I think at the end of the day, I think there might be some room somewhere for like, I don't know that I would do it for,
Street incentive, because I'm putting together PR boxes for my street team, and those are my
sure.
so, but it's not a direct one to one.
Yeah. There's room for things like that, but I think you have to be very careful and just to be very clear, you're not saying I'm giving you this in exchange for the review. Like if you've been on, my review team for a number of years and I'm not even saying that, oh, you've left so many reviews and you left all, this many stars on my reviews or anything like that. Not quantifying any of that information, but hey, you've been around for a while. I want to give you this perk just to say thanks. I think there's a place for that, but again, I would say you still have to be very, very careful about how you do that, how you would do anything like that.
A good point, because there will be like Patreons or subscriptions, and part of the perks is that you get the arc. So technically paying the
early access. Yeah, there are some lines there that people have to.
Is everyone still doing? Patsy, do you have your reviewers use the disclaimer tags? There's some debate about that still.
No, say they got a free copy. I understand that Amazon don't like that now, and there's not any need for it, because typing, this is an honest review anyway. That doesn't make it an honest review. I didn't ask people to do that, and a couple did, because presumably they've done this in the past and thought that's what you were going to do. But I don't really see the value of that. And I mean, Amazon can see that it's not a verified review, that they haven't bought the book, so And if the review comes up the day the book's out, it's pretty obvious they're part of an art team.
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
it's either an honest review or it's not. So the
Right.
fact that whether you're given the book or not doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the perception too of people saying in the reviews, like, I received this in exchange for, whatever verbiage they use. Because I know in recent years, Amazon has had issues just site wide, not just with books, with people manipulating the review system and all of that. And so I think that was probably why they switched away from that, because I think that gets perceived as some kind of manipulation by people who are there to, that by the people who actually read those reviews, like, oh, well, this person, said that they got a free copy, or they said this is an honest review in exchange for, this, that, or the other. And yeah, that, I think, to me, probably takes away from the efficacy of the review and makes it less trustworthy, is what I'm guessing. I'm sure they did all kinds of research on it as well.
I think a few years back that was like the standard thing that authors were told to do, to tell their readers to do, because if it says it's not verified, they obviously didn't buy the book at Amazon, which is okay. Amazon allows you to buy the book anywhere and review it on Amazon, but they're more likely to review that and maybe kick it out. And so a lot of authors for a while, were told that was the best advice, was to tell your readers to do that. And then it ended up with Amazon flagging those and saying, don't do that. Or, those reviews not being posted. So, yeah, it's been one of those things that's like, it's confusing, because you had one bit of advice and then that bit of advice became, no, don't do that. Oh no.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think people did it because they thought they were being more open, and honest, saying, and it didn't have the effect that was intended.
Right.
Yeah. And I think on, places like Goodreads, where it's kind of open season on what people write, what they say, sometimes, I avoid Goodreads just because, it could be.
Be careful, Kelly. You have to embrace good. I'm gonna step on a soapbox here. Excuse me for a moment. You can't avoid Goodreads. You can't, bury your head in the sand. You got to embrace it, and you got to find reviewers who are going to leave reviews there, because otherwise.
No, it's not that I tell people not to go to Goodreads.
No,
it's just I personally don't spend a ton of time. Well, and I have to, and I think a lot of authors are this way. I prepare myself before I view my reviews. And reviews are for readers. Stay out of that space. Don't respond. You see sometimes where people get a little bit, they get very offended about something that a reviewer said. And you have to have thick skin. And I'm surprised at how, actually like the first bad review that I received, I actually was surprised at how thick my skin was. I thought it was going to be like, oh, I'm never writing again, kind of thing. And actually I was kind of like, okay, there was some constructive criticism in there and I could take that, and using that to understand where maybe I need to, reflect on my writing style or whatever it is that they brought up. But yeah, I have to prep myself. I don't go to Goodreads on a regular basis to, or Amazon either. I don't really, like I said, the reviews are for readers. So, I let them have that space. That's for them.
Along those lines, I did have a question for you, Patsy, because I'm sure with some of your reviews, I'm sure you like most authors do, especially when you're working with an ARC team, you're working with your fans. You get plenty of positive reviews, but there's those negative reviews come along too, and they're a reality. It's one thing when somebody leaves you 1 or 2 stars and they don't write a review. They just leave you a star rating. Like, that's one thing. But when they leave you the star rating of 1 or 2 stars, and then they leave a detailed review about why they didn't like your book, it can be deflating. Have you had to deal with those, or if you did, what did you do?
I've not had anything horrible, and I think if it was just really horrible, the problem's not with the book. But I have had, I've had some. One person said, they read page 1 and it was obvious what was going to happen, and they only read to prove they were right. But the same book had another review saying, amazing twists and turns, I didn't expect it to come out like this. So it's a personal
People.
yeah, it's a personal thing. I mean, I'm glad I had the more positive one first, but people will have different opinions, and they won't like all they might even like one of your books and hate another one of your books. And I usually, when I review books that I've read, I'll go and look at like the 1-star ones to see what people have said, whether or not I think it's a good book. And that people often say the exact opposite of what I was thinking, or the exact opposite of another reviewer. So if they just didn't like it, I mean, in a way, it's good if they say why, because if they say, I didn't like it, there was too much sex and violence, somebody else would go, oh, good, lots of sex and violence, I'll read that one. So not that I haven't got sex and violence in mind, but it gives you an idea of why, and you think, well, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
I've seen quite a lot, not for mine because there's not swearing in my books, but I've seen a lot of books that have swearing. It doesn't particularly bother me, but it does bother some people. And so if it's if that's in the review, well, good. If you don't want to read that, that's a good thing, because you won't read a book you don't like. And if it doesn't bother you, then that doesn't put you off. So I think if people say why they don't like it, it's much better than a review that just says it's terrible. Is no help to anybody.
Right. No, and I think Emma shared this with me a while back, and this is some of the advice that I now give. So I'm crediting you here, Emma, for this one, which is that if somebody leaves a negative review, they are probably not your target audience to begin with, which I think is what you were hitting at there, which is that it's an indicator that you are not reaching your target audience. And that's something that I've bumped into several times myself, because I got some reviews from some readers that probably shouldn't have been on my ARC team at one point in time. This was a while ago, like a year ago. And since then, I've taken some steps to deal with that.
I actually got that from Becca Syme because it was a while ago. I think it might have been one of the monthly coaching webinars last year, and transitioning from I normally write dark or morally gray fantasy romance, and then I wrote a contemporary rom-com orc. And her thing is like, don't take those 1-stars personally. Sometimes it just means it was talking about transitioning a catalog from one spectrum to another. So going from like the warmer paranormal romance to the darker fantasy romance, you're like, don't take those 1-stars or 2-stars personally. A lot of times it just is a sign that you have readers in your audience still who shouldn't be there. And that'll let you know that you need to do a little bit more. What's the word when you sieve things out?
Sift.
Yeah, sift. That.
Yeah. There you go. Sift, sort.
Yeah, and I think
Becca Syme.
If you've got a lot of reviews saying, there was too much or not enough of something, then maybe a cover or a blurb or something is suggesting the wrong genre. So that might be something we need to fix.
It really will tell you. I recently published a novella. I'm not a novella writer. And my readers aren't looking for novellas from me. And a couple of the reviews were like, I knew what they were saying. They're basically saying this doesn't have the level of complexity and depth that I come to expect. And I'm drinking and ranting like it's 20,000 words. I can't give you the 60,000 80,000 word experience. I'm like, Scheherazade, Emma, that's the sign that they're not coming to you for short insta love. You need to stay in your wheelhouse.
And now we've come to our story behind the story segment, where we talk about our guests, their current creative endeavors. So Patsy, we've been talking about reviews. We've been talking about, getting reviews on Amazon, our teams, all that stuff. But let's talk about your books. Because like I said, we reviewed your blurb in one of our webinars, and I was really intrigued by the whole concept. So we've got murders going on. There's cake involved.
Always.
There was that combination that just struck me. I want to know. I want to. This is maybe an odd question to lead off with, but do you like the cakes? I imagine there's cake featured in the books. Have you created recipes for these, or are you going with like typical traditional recipes and whatnot?
All sorts. There's a lot of food in all my books, because I like to be thorough on my research. So
Yeah.
I've got to put things that I want to research. But I did. There's actually in the village where my series is set, there's a community magazine, and a special issue of that community magazine is my reader magnet. So it's got in the magazine they had a short story competition, so there's short stories to read, and then there's bits from various members of the community, and one of those is a cake recipe.
I love it.
So
I love
That's
it.
brilliant. That's like such a great reader magnet. Like, here's this town you've just learned all about, and here's the magazine that is from that
yeah,
town. I just love that. That's
it
amazing.
gets in. It's mentioned in the magazine's mentioned in all of them. It's called the village is Little Mallow, and it's Little Mallow's little mag. That's run by the verger, who's one of the key character. So yeah, it was quite fun to do that, and I've got there's a lot of flowers and gardening in it, and so one of the articles is on how to keep cut flowers fresh.
Right.
So yeah, it was fun to do that, and once you've written a couple of books with the characters, you know the kind of thing they might send in. So that was
Right. Well, and that's, gosh, I can't even, again, I write space opera, so like I'm envious right now because I'm sure somebody out there has done something really, immersive like that. And I've had my own ideas, but that's I love it. I'm in love with that idea. It honestly makes me want to write something set in, the modern world, because I could use something like
Cozy village.
right. Well, yeah, cozy sci-fi, maybe. I don't know.
yeah.
I've got too many projects on my plate. Will give me more ideas. But how did you get into writing? Is this something you've been doing for a long time? Is this relatively recent?
Yeah, 20 odd years. I got into it by accident. I just did evening classes because I thought it'd be, I'd had a whole change of life. I'd moved, I got divorced, I got a new job. So I wanted something, to take up time. And as you know, writing can do that. But I just got hooked, and I started by writing fiction for women's magazines. And in UK, women's magazines are much more of a thing than they are in the US. You've got Woman's World, I think, is the nearest equivalent that has fiction. And I only ever intended to write short stories. And then one of my short stories got to 80,000 words, and I didn't know the ending. And I thought, this is not a short story. So I did eventually write the novel, but it took 10 years because I had to go and learn a bit about writing them. But the cozy mystery story I wrote for the magazines because most of them like cozy, nice stories, but obviously they've got to have a bit of conflict or whatever. So quite a lot. I've written quite a lot about the village of Little Mallow. Sometimes naming it, sometimes not, but it was a real place to me. And then when we mentioned my camper van, I write a lot in the camper van, and I've written short stories and books on the location, which is great because it's handy for research. Then come COVID, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't use the van, and I wanted to go somewhere nice, so I went to Little Mallow, which I already knew from the short stories, and it's actually it's between the village I live and the next village. there is no space there. I've completely made it up, but there's real places. If they go off to the nearest town, that nearest town is a real town,
Right.
but the village isn't. So I'm not killing off my neighbours. Make it all up and put on. And also I wanted a castle, and this our village doesn't have a castle, so I built that. But it was just a nice place for me to go in COVID. And people like going to nice, cozy places. If you want to be a tourist and come to an English village, Little Mallow has got, it's maybe slightly cliched, they're not all exactly like it, but I've got all the things. You've got the little post office, and you've got the cozy pub, and you've got all the neighbours that know each other and keep an eye on each other in good ways and not so good ways. And it was such a real place to me. I mean, I could walk you around there. I know what it's like, except it can expand a bit, because if I suddenly decide I need a new shop or something, I can just put one in.
Sure. Right. Well, and that's the convenience of it being somewhat fictional, right? Is that you can add on to what's already there. But it's the fact that you can like actually visit that. Again, writing science fiction, I have to make all this stuff up in my head, but I do still try to base it off of like real world locations that I've been to where I can. But I don't have that advantage of being able to literally stand in the place where my book is set. That's powerful.
I was going to say, because I also use real places, because people like to read about places they've gone or visit places that they've read about. So there are real places you could go to, the places mentioned in it, and you could stand where the village would be if it existed. So, people, I know when I'm reading a book and I've gone, I've gone there, or, when I've gone to a location and I know I read a book, I'll look out for the streets or the shops or things that are mentioned. So I think that's a nice thing to be able to do.
So I had a question about your reader magnet, just kind of circling back to that.
Oh.
Do you add to that as you add books? Do you create a new one for each of your, if you come up with a new book?
It's the same one for the series. It's just the reader magnet I use for everything now. But I may well add to it, because it's a magazine. I could put new articles and things in. Like I've explained how to find Little Mallow. You need a dinghy. But I've and some scissors and a map. It's a bit complicated. Read the reading magnet. But I could easily add to it, or I might change it, because in order to use a lot, have enough to make like a worth reading, I put short stories in. So it was a special edition, which was the results of a made up short story competition. So they were the entries. I might well change those to ones that fit better. I just, I picked a mix of genres and things that I thought would work. So I might change it around, or as you say, I might add new articles to it and things. But I'm sticking.
I was just thinking, I just thought it was really kind of cool. It could be like a living document as you release a new book. You add in new articles or short stories that go along, or little advertisements for the little shop you created, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that idea.
It's just so many like ideas. That's a really great idea.
And it's a good example, because a lot of new authors will ask us, well, I don't have content. We're like, be creative. So
this is creative.
Perfect. You don't have to have like a whole free book, or even like a novel or something. You can do that bonus content.
Right.
Well, when I first got my newsletter, I didn't have anything, and I wasn't signed up to BookFunnel. I didn't know what I was doing at all. So I had a 600-word short story that I just put in the newsletter. But at least I was giving something. I did say get a very short story, so people knew what they were getting. But something's better than nothing, isn't it? I think.
Right. No, absolutely. As far as like where are you at like now your current work in progress?
Well,
What
this
are
is book, bit of product placement. Oh, it won't come sharp.
Oh,
There
there
it
we go.
is.
Got it.
That's the first one that came out at the beginning of the year. The second one came out in July. I'm now, the third one's with my beta team, and they're reading it and I'm editing it. So it's going to be out early next year. And then I've got lots of ideas for more books. You could I can see why people write enormous series, because as soon as you start plotting, you get, I could do this and this, and that's more than one book. So I may do some more.
Is it a trilogy or
No, it's
you
it
on?
carries on, each book standalone. So
Okay.
if you bought book 3, that works as a book on its own. Well,
Sure.
when it comes out, but it goes chronologically, and there's character development. So if you were going to read all 3, it makes a lot of sense to start with book 1. But personally, I don't like a series where if you didn't start with the first one, you're lost, or it doesn't finish. So I do like them to be standalone, and they're not. Each one's got 3 point of view characters, but they're not the same ones. So they go through the first one. The main character is the police detective, and then there's the verger who edits the magazine, and then there's a friend of theirs, and then in the next one, that friend again is Ellie is in it, and the verger becomes the main character. And then I've introduced another character who's only had a very tiny part in the first one, and then the next one carries on. There's different point of view characters, but they're not completely new characters. And the ones in here in the first book that aren't point of view characters, you still they're in conversations, or you hear what's happened to them and things. So I try and, if you've got a favorite character, at least you'll know what happened to them, even if it wasn't a major part of the plot.
But you've got multiple points of entry, and that's smart. So
Point of view. Yeah, because just from my own experience, I know you pick up a book, you don't always necessarily know it's part of a big series, and you want to be able to read it. You don't want to have to, well, there's no point me reading this till I've gone and bought 7 other books and gone through those. It's it can be off-putting, but you still get something. If you read the second one and then realize that it was the first one, you could go and read it. I'm careful not to do big spoilers. So in book 2 it doesn't say and the person that did the crime in book 1 was whoever, which it's quite difficult. So I think, to be fair to the readers, you should be able to buy a book and it works as a book, even if it's part of a series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a challenge.
Different genres work differently with that, though. I think a crime is easy because you have a crime and it can be resolved at the end. So that's a whole book. Maybe in fantasy and things where it's a huge, you've got to build everything. Maybe that works differently.
Yeah, if you've got a really like plot lines that are being developed over a long period of time, I could see how that would be a little tough to do with having multiple points of entry. But at the same time, like, I can think of a series that I jumped into, like it was an audio series actually, on YouTube of all places. And so that's kind of how I stumbled upon it. And like, I knew of this guy, and he has a fairly long, audiobook series on YouTube. And I just saw one in my feed one day and hopped in. It was book 6, but it got me into it. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back and start from the beginning. I don't think that he wrote them intentionally to be standalone, because I didn't get the feel that it was, but it was still enough to get me interested. I was still, figuring out his writing style, which I liked, and then also meeting some of those characters, and it worked out for me in that case. So yeah, I think that's a smart way to do it if you can. But I imagine it's challenging to, because you have to almost like craft that ahead of time to know like what you can include and what you shouldn't include, and to avoid spoilers.
Yeah, it will probably get harder, because one of the things with the crime stories, eventually in this village there's been a lot of crimes, and how aware the characters have
Yeah.
happened, and so you've got to work on that. But
Starts to become maybe a little suspicious if there's been a whole string of high profile crimes and everybody's acting like it's business as usual. But
yeah.
I can see that.
Well, we all remember Angela Lansbury. I mean, like nobody
Yeah.
wants to, she's the common denominator, folks.
All right. Well, we have to wrap things up here for today. But Patsy, I want to thank you for joining us. This was a great conversation. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Glad to have you here. As always, thank you to my co-hosts, Emma and Kelly. Thank you to our viewers as well for hanging out with us. I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. Let us know in the comments what you think. What are some things you want to see in terms of topics for upcoming podcasts, or maybe the little nuggets and tidbits you gleaned from today's episode? Let us know. But thank you, folks. We will see you in the next one. Toodaloo.
Bye.
Thank you for watching. Check out these other videos from BookFunnel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.